Welcome to our third and final Social Capitalist Luncheon Series event. My name is Jennifer Baker-Jones, and it is my pleasure to serve as MC today. I am the board chair at SCI, and I am pleased to support the organization because of the incredible work SCI is doing across Eastern Massachusetts and how they are still carrying out their mission and responding to even greater needs in these trying times. Today's event will feature the presentation of the 2021 SCI Idealist Awards. Before we go to the awards presentation, we're going to take a few minutes to hear about SCI's mission and recent accomplishments. First, let me introduce David Crowley, President and founder of SCI.
Thanks, Jennifer. And thanks everyone for joining. Great to see the turnout on this nice day to be inside in front of a screen doing Zoom. So after a long winter of being hunkered down with a lot of Zoom meetings, a lot of emails, we finally had a nice, warm, early spring day, and it found us with over 100 diverse Woburn residents gathering on the town common for an AAPI support vigil. We had a great turnout from young people, which was great to see, and we heard from middle school students, ministers, and one of our very own AmeriCorps members. Powerful voices and important connections that day. Social capital is all about the value of making connections in our communities. And at SCI, we have a special focus on connections that bridge across differences so that we can create communities where all of us can thrive. Like most organizations, SCI has had to adapt over the past year, and that has certainly meant a fair amount of our programming happening like this virtually. And we figured out how to adapt and run some powerful programs, from a new youth pitch contest to several anti-racism programs we ran in collaboration with partners. And our AmeriCorps team was great about adapting to hybrid service, virtual service, and continuing to have impact through it all. Though we've had some success doing the program with our screens like this, it does, when I think back to the past year, some of the in-person moments we've been able to have really do stand with me the most. I think back to a cold November day. I had the task of delivering the extra leaf bags, and there were a lot needed because we had a great turnout of volunteers, folks coming out to help rake leaves for isolated seniors. As I pulled up to one yard full of teenagers going at their task diligently, I could see they were having a great time. I know they were glad to help seniors, but they're also just so psyched to get out from all the virtual schooling and get out into the community with some of their friends and doing something together. I also think back to October when we heard that the annual postal food drive was canceled because of COVID. We were able to quickly leverage our network of volunteers to have people collect food in their neighborhoods and bring over $5,000 worth of food to the local food bank. And certainly meeting those basic needs, because there have been so many throughout our greater Boston communities, doing what we can to leverage volunteers and coordinate our partners to respond to those basic needs has been a big part of our work. Going back to that vigil I mentioned, in many ways, collaborating with partners to respond to an important issue in our community is in keeping with what SCI has done since we were founded back in 2002. But somehow there was something distinctly different about that event as well, something new. And it was not just because we were wearing masks. I was kind of feeling that as we are starting to come back out into public places and seeing one another in person again after this after the long winter of the pandemic, that we have new opportunities to connect. We have a new opportunity to reach out and build new relationships, because we have a deeper appreciation for how much we need each other and a deeper understanding of the significant inequities that we still face. And we have a new opportunity to make a difference. I look forward to today as we recognize 3 amazing leaders who are working every day to create inclusive organizations and equitable communities. And we look forward to staying connected with you so that we can leverage our collective social capital in order to create healthy, thriving communities for everyone. Thanks.
As you may know, the Social Capitalist Luncheon is our biggest fundraiser of the year. Your donations help SCI carry out its mission. We came into the luncheon series having raised over $65,000 already, thanks to our generous sponsors and donors. On behalf of the SCI board, let me please say a big thank you to all of our sponsors. A special thanks to our gold sponsors, Cummings Properties, Eastern Bank, Liberty Mutual Insurance, State Street, Vertex, and Winchester Hospital, a member of the Beth Israel Lahey Health. I would now like to call upon fellow board member Adriana Mendez Sheldon to tell us about today's fundraising goal.
Thanks, Jennifer. With the generous response from our sponsors, we came into the luncheon series just needing to raise an additional $12,000 to meet our goal. After our first two events, we've raised just over $6,000, so we are halfway there. We have two ways you can support SCI today. You can donate by texting SCI 2021 to 50155 and follow the prompts to make your donation. After you text your pledge amount, you can complete the rest of the information later. You'll get friendly reminders. We also have an online auction with many great items you can bid on. There's a link to the auction in the chat, or you can go to socialcapital.org and click on the auction to bid. The auction will close today at 3 p.m., so be sure to check it out soon. I'll be back later to check on that fundraising goal and share more ways on how your donation can make a difference at SCI's mission.
Thank you, Adriana. Now it's time to meet our first 2021 SCI Idealist Award recipient. For our introduction, I'm going to call upon Lourdes German, Assistant Professor of Social Impact Practice at Boston College.
Great. Thank you again for this invitation. 15 years ago, I started my career at a law firm here in Boston, and in search of mentors, one of my colleagues suggested I contact a woman named Betty Francisco, whom she described as a rising leader who just left the firm to join a company called Millennium Partners as general counsel. And I remember distinctly when I looked up her biography, feeling incredibly impressed, but so hesitant, because I realized that I had absolutely nothing to offer her in that meeting as someone just starting out. And I was incredibly grateful, not only when she replied, but when she accepted my invitation and spent enormous time, care, and generosity, taking an earnest approach to understanding who I was, listening to my aspirations, and most importantly, hearing me talk about the contributions I wanted to make in our community, which really became the heart of that conversation. And the steps she took on her own after that meeting to create early pathways for me are still meaningful to this day. And in the 15 years of friendship since that one coffee, I have seen Betty bring that same generosity to every mentee I have ever introduced her to countless people with whom she spends what I call invisible hours behind the scenes. And she is honestly someone who does not go a day without making an introduction, providing guidance, or opening a door to somebody here in our community. And that is a hallmark of who she is. She has a remarkable work ethic, a commitment to driving social change. She's done this for decades, not only while being a mother, but also building a career as an attorney and business leader with intentionality at mission-driven organizations that include not only her own company, Reimagine Play, but when she served as general counsel at Compass Working Capital, co-founded Amplify Latinx, and in her current role as chief executive officer of the Boston Impacts Initiative. And she does all this with incredible commitment to the life she has outside of work, where she serves on a number of boards, including the Boston Foundation, Beth Israel, the Nellie Mae Foundation, the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston's Community Development Advisory Council, and so many others. And I'm a firm believer that everything you do and everything you say will show the world who you are and what you are capable of contributing to others. If we look at Betty's collective body of work, including so many things I was not able to include, but that are in her bio, it shows us that she is a generous, brilliant, creative, and thoughtful woman who cares about others, who always makes a space to advance them. And she is a leader who is unselfish, courageous, and so fearless when building coalitions and partnerships to drive social change around the hardest issues. And I remember distinctly when Boston Magazine named her as one of the 100 most influential people in Boston, and the Boston Business Journal recognized her as one of the region's most influential people, that her alma mater, Northeastern, published a really terrific article that many of you may have read about her. And there was one sentence in that article which I think really captures why she is such a remarkable leader and so worthy of this distinction. And it was a little sentence somewhere in the middle that said, "She doesn't get much sleep, but she is a bridge to the lasting change we need at this pivotal moment. Betty, you are that and so much more. Your passion, vision, humility, and grace will continue to drive change in our community. I am certain of that in so many meaningful ways, and it will continue to inspire me and so many others who live those values alongside you. And for those reasons and so many others, I hope that everybody here joins me in congratulating Betty on receiving this well-deserved honor. She truly embodies everything that this award represents.
Wow, Lourdes. Oh my God, you're gonna make me cry. Thank you so much for that beautiful, beautiful introduction. You've been such a steadfast friend, mentor, champion for so many years. Even though you're younger than me, I consider you my mentor as well. I learned so much from you, and I'm grateful to have you in my life and what I consider my familia. I'm deeply honored and grateful today to be recognized as the 2021 SCI Idealist, along with my fellow honorees, Paul Francisco and Yolanda Coentro. Thank you, David Crowley, Jennifer Jones, the board of SCI, the host committee, and to all the sponsors who are supporting this celebration today. And thank you to all the friends and colleagues in the audience who have joined us. This is a very special honor for me because Paul and I are being recognized together for much of the work that we do as part of our daily professional and personal lives. Paul happens to be my husband, for those of you who didn't know that. And when I first met Paul, he was one of the leaders of Alpha Boston, a Latino professional network, and a diversity recruiter at Gillette. Needless to say, he was basically in the relationship business. And it was through Paul and serving ultimately on the board of Alpha myself that I learned the value of networking, of building cross-sector relationships with business, political, and civic leaders. As someone who lacked a network or social capital in Boston, originally being from New York, I quickly learned the power of having mutually beneficial relationships with the right people. Paul taught me how to use our growing influence to open doors for others, to help people find career building jobs, to recommend diverse candidates for business and leadership opportunities, and eventually to use our social capital to advocate for racial and social justice. The work of SCI exemplifies these values that I strive to live every day. These are the values of network building, of sponsorship, advocacy, to increase the diversity of representation and economic opportunity for communities of color. As many of you know, I wear many, many hats. I'm a social entrepreneur, an investor, a recovering lawyer, but first and foremost, I'm an advocate for racial equity. Just 4 weeks into the role, I'm currently the new CEO of Boston Impact Initiative, an impact investing fund working to close the racial wealth divide in Eastern Massachusetts. As a social impact fund, we invest in people and in their communities. And we know that our role is more than just as a capital provider. We also provide social capital. These are the introductions to resources, to potential customers, to partners, and future investors for these growing businesses. And that's why I am so excited to work for BII and to open the doors to support our businesses who are owned by entrepreneurs of color. In addition to my role at BII, I'm also the co-founder of Amplify Latinx, which is building economic and political power for Latinos in Massachusetts. We do this work by advancing civic engagement and connecting, championing, and amplifying the voice of Latino leaders in the Commonwealth. As a network that's grown from 50 women originally to 5,000 strong, we're advancing Latino leadership representation, we're using our social capital to open doors, and we're advocating for policies and practices to increase Latino economic mobility. So what can we collectively do to grow representative voices in our civic and business community? This is a crucial question today. First, let's continue to build our relationships with each other by working together to co-create and solve intractable problems together. Second, let's challenge ourselves to do our part to increase diverse representation at the highest levels, from city councils to the C-suite. Third, let's continue investing in organizations like SCI Social Capital, which bring together young people to support communities and build civic engagement. At the same time, let's invest and you invest your social capital in our young leaders and in Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and Asian leaders who are building inclusive and impactful organizations and businesses. In the end, expanding social capital is not just about how much money you can raise or many important people you know. It's about going out of your way to reach out to someone having a hard time, to lend your support, to open a door to new opportunities, and to leave them with a little more hope and happiness. Thank you once again to SCI Social Capital. I'm deeply honored to receive this award. Jennifer, I turn it back to you.
Congratulations, Betty, on your well-deserved recognition. Now, before we get to our next award, I'd like to call upon Phil Gordon, SCI Deputy Director, to tell us more about the SCI AmeriCorps program.
Good afternoon, and welcome to everyone who has joined us today. SCI is based in Woburn, and we are extremely proud of the ongoing impact that we have been able to make in our hometown as well as regionally. When the reality of COVID-19 as a long-term proposition set in for me and many others around this time last year, I tried my best to focus on the potential positives and opportunities that the pandemic could present, especially for smaller community-based organizations like SCI. While David shared some ways SCI pivoted to meet community needs, we also pressed ahead with new program initiatives in spite of the challenges presented by the pandemic. One pilot program SCI ran this spring was the Youth Grant Pitch Contest, where 35 local teams participated in developing community projects addressing the mental health needs of their peers. 6 youth teams committed to a month-long learning experience where they were paired with a volunteer coach who mentored participants as they developed their proposals over 4 weeks. The program wrapped up with a virtual pitch contest where team presentations were scored by a panel of judges who awarded $4,000 in grant funds to selected groups that will complete their projects over the next 6 months. For me, the positive impact of the pitch contest was clear. I saw each young person grow their self-confidence throughout the program, and every team came up with innovative and impactful projects. For example, one team from the James L. McCown Boys and Girls Club of Woburn received funding to conduct a free mental health workshop for middle school students where mental health experts and a certified yoga instructor will teach how to identify emotions, manage stress, and connect the mind and body. I was also able to see the effect on our volunteer coaches who were excited to share their professional knowledge while also being impressed by the next generation of young leaders. And I knew the pitch contest was a success when our volunteer panel of judges had a tough time deciding how to distribute the funding because the youth presentations were so impressive. Next year, I'm excited to share that SCI plans to expand this opportunity for more impact to more youth in greater Boston communities. SCI also supports youth success in greater Boston by connecting young people with the relationships, experiences, and resources they need to succeed through the SCI AmeriCorps program. Each year between September and June, over 20 SCI AmeriCorps members engage in volunteer outreach and capacity building activities that increase volunteer engagement, provide leadership training, and create service learning opportunities for youth serving programs at our nonprofit organizations. Our SCI AmeriCorps members seek to increase social capital of young people by serving one of 2 roles. First, our volunteer outreach coordinators build capacity to support volunteer engagement efforts for youth-focused programming through organizing community events, community outreach efforts, and program management. And second, our youth leadership coordinators build capacities to support youth development efforts through direct academic support, community service learning activities, and leadership opportunities. This service year obviously brought new and unpredictable challenges for our program and members. I've been blessed to lead, support, and guide our 2021 cohort of young women and men who have all made significant sacrifices in service this year. I know firsthand that the impact of each of our members was needed more than ever during the pandemic. So now it is my honor to introduce SCI AmeriCorps Volunteer Outreach Coordinator, Leandra Reyes, who has been serving with us at SCI since September and will share just a bit about her experience and impact this year.
Thank you, Phil. When the pandemic made its mark last year, I was serving as the Youth Leadership Coordinator with Girls Inc. of Lynn. Being the advisor to 6 teenage girls during a time of so much unknown taught me a lot about the importance of relationships. For many of the youth I served, Girls Inc. was their safe place, and it was suddenly taken from them. I knew that beyond our weekly meetings, I needed to create a separate space for them to express their feelings. Having one-on-one check-ins with the youth was a priority for me to ensure that they had the support they needed. This helped me prepare for my second year of service with SCI. The one-on-one check-ins only strengthened the relationships I had and continue to have with those youth. As a second-year member, I knew it was important to continue the individual check-ins with the members of the cohort, as many of them would be starting their service year virtually. Having the check-ins meant creating a space for myself and the members to get to know one another even with the barrier of a screen. These check-ins led to friendships outside of Zoom and allowed me to build social capital for myself and others. Another way I built social capital was through emailing volunteers individually and calling seniors in the community to introduce myself and start making connections. I understood the importance of building trust and relationships in the community, especially as someone new to this community. I knew relationships were formed when many volunteers of all ages helped shovel the snow for the seniors during every snowstorm, some volunteers even going to multiple homes. I knew relationships were formed when the members of the community attended our Black History Month Film Fridays and contributed to rich discussions. I knew relationships were formed during our relief raking event when I went to a senior's house to distribute extra supplies for the volunteers and ended up spending 45 minutes speaking with the woman who lived there, with masks on, of course. We talked about anything and everything, and I'll never forget the smile on her face as she said, "Thank you so much for talking with me." I knew there would be significant challenges this service year, but I'm proud of the efforts we made to keep building and strengthening our community. Now I know that I can continue to support and serve people wherever I go, and that with whatever I do, and I look forward to continuing making positive impacts in my community. Thank you.
Thank you, Leandra, for sharing your story of service. Now I want to call Adriana back up to tell us more about how your donations can make a difference for SCI.
Thank you, Jennifer. Your donations of any amount help us strengthen communities. But let me give you a few examples of how we can put your donation to use. First, a $1,000 donation can support the grant for one team of youth carrying out the youth pitch contest that Phil was just talking about. That contest and project is addressing mental health issues and racial equity issues. We hope to fund 5 of those groups in the coming year. A donation of $250 supports the Cultural Connections dinner, where people of diverse backgrounds come together to prepare a meal that gives them a chance to learn about another culture and cuisine. Last but not least, we are looking for donations to give Leandra and the amazing team of AmeriCorps members a great send out to thank them for their service. A $50 donation supports a graduation gift and food for one AmeriCorps member. We are looking for 22 of those donations.
Thanks, Adriana. And just a reminder to text SCI 2021 to 50155 and follow the prompts to make your donation. You can also hop onto the auction site via socialcapitalinc.org. In addition to bidding on items, you can fund one of those needs that Adriana mentioned via the auction site. And thank you for your support. I'd like to go on to our next SCI Idealist presentation now. To make the introduction, I'd like to call upon Dr. Makiba McCreary, the Patty and Jonathan Kraft Chief of Learning and Community Engagement at the Museum of Fine Arts.
Thank you. I do have the honor of introducing Paul Francisco. So Paul, as you could probably find in his bio, is the Chief Diversity Officer and Head of Workforce Development Programs at State Street Corporation. There he's leading the implementation of State Street's global diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies. He also oversees the execution of workforce development strategies and affirmative action planning. I could talk about Paul coming to the US from Honduras as a teenager, teaching himself English, navigating a world of higher education, and then playing for the Dolphins and the Patriots. I could also talk about his very strong suit game and his quiet passion for an unnamed sneaker collection. But certainly Paul's greatest accomplishment is being the father of Giselle and Sophia and the husband of Betty Francisco. Paul also gets props for being the surrogate uncle to my son, Gary. This year, as our worlds shut down and as we all survived a pandemic, two things happened in this city that represent courage and leadership. Courage and leadership that was delivered with a calm call to action. With the colleagues I know he would include, Paul helped to galvanize the new Commonwealth Racial Equity and Social Justice Fund, a fund that's pushing for the collective power of Black and Brown communities to eliminate systemic racism and racial inequity across the Commonwealth. This summer, Paul and the Men's Dinner Group led a powerful protest to ensure that those of us who were mothers to Black sons were well reminded that those beautiful and precious lives did indeed matter. And so you can imagine that I found myself at a loss when trying to think about how I might introduce this man who is so very special, both to me and to the city of Boston. I went to a few others who I think are masters of language in a way that I am not. They remind me with these quotes of the qualities that are so truly core to Paul. The only thing is, people have to develop courage. It's the most important of all virtues, because without courage, you can't practice any other virtues consistently. Maya Angelou. The only tyrant I accept in this world is the still small voice within me. And even though I have to face the prospect of being a minority of one, I humbly believe I have the courage to be in such a hopeless minority. Mahatma Gandhi. Earn your leadership every day. Michael Jordan. Talk about his best qualities, that he helps bring people together, like he's funny and how nice he is and how calm he is, and how those are good traits to help people bring together people and to get them to get along. Gary Xavier McCrary. And Paul reminds me how grateful I am that we do indeed get to choose our family. Congratulations, Paul, to an honor well-deserved. You are changing the fabric of this community with such grace and power, and you make it possible for all of us to envision a beautiful future.
Thank you. I knew you were going to do this, Makiba. You know, all of us in this call are here because we believe that what we do is bigger than us. And that, to me, has been what's motivated me to continue to do this work, and the work that SCI does, the work that each of you do in your own right. It's amazing. So thank you to SCI for this recognition, David, for having started this organization, having the courage to do that, for the board and your guidance and leadership, and navigating this troubled waters for this organization and for society at large, for the staff, for hanging in there, being there and doing what you do every day, and the volunteers who are the lifeline of this type of work. I was looking up the definition of an idealist before this event, and I didn't really like the definition. Webster sort of defined it as impractical dreamers, people who think of utopia, but don't necessarily have, practical approaches to solutions. And I said, that's not true. That's not true. You can dream big, you can be an idealist, but you also can act. You also can coalesce, can drive change, can activate. And that is what SCI does. That is what each of us in this call do. That is the power that we have. And, the reason why I do what I do is not because, you know, it's nice to get together with my extended family, as many of you are, and, you know, be recognized for it, but because the need is such, and the opportunity is such. I would not be where I am today had it not been for a village, a community that came together, that rallied around me, that put their arms around me, that showed me that I was worth it, that showed me that I could achieve. And I remember coming as a 17-year-old immigrant to this country, and organizations like Orchard Park CDC, back in the day, Lena Park CDC, organizations like La Alianza Hispana, were critical to my development. Today, organizations like the Partnership, and I see my friends from the Partnership here, you know, ROCA, organizations I'm a part of, from a board perspective or from a development perspective, continue to ensure that my social capital is being able to be deployed, utilized in the right way. I've always believed in collaboration. I've always believed in connection. I've always believed in what good is it for me to have social capital if I'm not sharing that, if I'm not connecting people, and if I'm not helping people. So I just want to thank you all again for being here. Apologies for getting emotional at the beginning, but it's hard to not to when you have family introduce you in the way they do it, especially hearing the words from my favorite nephew, Gary. So thank you.
Congratulations on your award, Paul. Just outstanding tributes. Let's take a quick look at how we're doing on our fundraising goal before our final presentation. It looks like we're now up over $10,000 at $10,239. Thank you so much for your generous support. Remember, you can easily help SCI strengthen communities by texting SCI 2021 to 50155 and follow the prompts to make your donation. And please head over to the auction site where you can bid, and also you'll find the needs that Adriana had outlined earlier on that site. Now it's time to meet our final 2021 SCI Idealist. For the introduction, I'd like to call upon Kinora Parham, Executive Director at End Rape on Campus.
Thank you so much for the invitation to be here this afternoon. My name is Kinora Parham, and I serve as the Executive Director of End Rape on Campus, a national and globally recognized organization that works to end campus sexual violence in the higher education space. And I am a proud alumna of the class of 2016 of the Community Fellows Program with the Institute for Nonprofit Practice, led by its extraordinary and phenomenal leader, Yolanda Cuentro. In 2018, I moved from the Boston area to the DC area to take on a new role as the Chief of Staff of End Rape on Campus. And within 1 year, the organization was on its way to closing its doors. And as the second most senior staff, I was asked by the board of directors to take the helm. I accepted the challenge, but not first without calling on Yolanda, who I called on for guidance. She quickly went into high gear and guided me through. And I remember the first thing she said to me was, "You don't have to do this, but I know you can do this." And connected me with another executive director who went through a similar hurdle. Needless to say, EROC is still here, and we're thriving under Civic Nation, which stems from staff of the Obama administration, who essentially created a home for change makers who inspire, educate, and activate people around issues that will define this generation. So there is a reason that I share with you the position in which I serve, and that reason is simple. I knew I could get to this position based off of my skill set and my experience, but it was through IMP and Yolanda's guidance, mentorship, profound discernment, ingenuity for seeing the humanity in people, and her ability to see me that I truly knew I could get there. So when I was asked to introduce Yolanda, or some of us who can lovingly call her Yo, it was within minutes and without hesitation, I immediately accepted. However, I can give the roses that Yolanda so absolutely deserves, I will take every opportunity to do so. Yolanda has been there for me in more ways than I think she knows, because it's not always about what people do for you directly, but also how they show up in this world that demonstrates true leadership, friendship, community, and family. Yolanda has made an incredible mark, not only on my life, but the lives of our entire IMP family and partners, because she recognizes the important need to not only work both efficiently and collaboratively across different sectors, but also what it means to provide access and opportunity to young and seasoned professionals at the intersections of their identities, who simply want to be seen, heard, and be their authentic selves as they navigate through the complexities of the work and service sectors, where internal cultural change and shifting can be quite daunting. So if there is anyone who's an idealist, but also a realist and a visionary, it is Yolanda, because she dares to lead with love, humility, and empathy. For me, if the saying lift as you climb was a person, I'm sorry, Yolanda is my person. So congratulations to my favorite person and human being who's in my corner always.
Wow. These are the times where you want to be in the room so you can hug, because there aren't words to really capture it all. So I'm glad Paul cried first, so then Kinora and I could come thereafter. So, Kinora, thank you so much. You always touch my heart, and I'm just so honored to be in your corner and to have you in mine. And really a huge and deep thanks to everybody from the SCI team and board and broader community, the AmeriCorps members, for your service. I'm just so incredibly honored to receive this award alongside two other amazing leaders and friends who I've kind of made it my job to find ways to hang out with them and learn from them and glean from their incredible leadership, Betty and Paul Francisco, and from an organization whose mission and work and deep connections in our community I've continually admired. SCI leverages relationships for change, and from the start, they acknowledged and amplified the power of social capital and the importance of sharing it. This is core to the mission of the Institute for Nonprofit Practice, or INP as we call ourselves, where I'm so humbled to work and to bring, my time and heart to. At INP, we transform communities by equipping the most promising social impact leaders from nonprofits, public sectors, and social enterprises, people like Kinora. We bring the skills, networks, confidence, resources that they need to effectively lead, to advance justice, to rise in their careers, and make their organizations effective, innovative, and sustainable. And we're also deeply committed to closing historic racial and gender gaps in leadership, and to ensure that the social impact sector reflects the communities that we all serve and its diversity. And we do this by building the knowledge capital, the financial capital, and the social capital of our student leaders. So there's great alignment here. And for me, it's personal. It's one of the determining factors in my own leadership success to date. As a young person, it was a family friend who helped me get into a summer program at Brown University that gave me a view on what education in college might mean for my family. And in college, it came from a teacher, Professor Bergen, who introduced me to an admissions director of a master's in social work program, who both enrolled me early in the program and later supported me to finish paying for my degree, as I nearly dropped out because I didn't have the financial means. As a professional, there were countless colleagues, friends who made introductions, who showed me the leadership ropes, who reminded me of my value, who pulled up a seat for me or shared their own seat at the proverbial table.
And as a student and leader at INP, it was our founder, Barry Dim, who connected me and shared his influence and relationships, pushed me to do what I was uncertain I could, and he changed my career trajectory. And then countless of inspiring colleagues, many of whom are here, my incredible board also represented here, my friends and my family. They continue to show up to back me in countless ways. I heard that proverb, lift as you climb, really early in my life. Full disclosure, I think the first time was in middle school while I was watching Oprah. So now you might know too much. And I wrote this saying down, actually, even as a kid. I wrote it on this small piece of paper that I carried in my wallet for years. And it just struck me. I wanted to remember who I was. I wanted to embody what I saw my family do for others despite having so little. And no matter where I landed, I wanted to remember that my social capital, essentially, and my success wasn't mine alone, that I had a responsibility to bring others along with me on the road because it was made for us and not just for me. I used to think that leveraging networks was some disingenuous way of rising, like maybe it was the easy way to success, and somehow I needed to prove that I could get there alone. But progress can't be achieved by one person. And I learned that as a community organizer, that if I was to lead towards justice, networks, relationships, sharing power, offering others the chance to lead, that would need to be centered in my approach to be successful. Networks and relationships help us build bridges and connections between people that strengthen our communities, and that's clearly been a theme today. They help us drive change and progress, and it's why this honor is so humbling for me. I've aimed to serve as a bridge throughout my life, and I have much more to do to be recognized by this organization that's dedicated its work to deeply and meaningfully build social capital for others just makes me profoundly grateful. At INP, like I said, we believe in the power of connection as well, and we need each other. The problems facing us just can't be solved in isolation. SCI has a fundamental understanding of that. And leadership doesn't need to be lonely at the top. Loneliness doesn't engender success. When there's no playbook, it's our networks and the access we have through our resources and support in those networks that get us through. It's our social capital. And we know that perhaps now better than ever. I hope that we'll each continue to play a role in sharing power and relationships with each other, and especially with our young people, as we hand over the work to future generations that's still really left for us to do. So I just thank you again for this recognition and for all that everyone here is doing to connect individuals and organizations across difference so our communities can be stronger. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Yolanda, on your well-deserved award. And I think I'm looking in the chat and just my own reflection. This was so beautiful. And thank you so much for the words that are those that introduced, shared, and for our award recipients, really outstanding and such a meaningful experience to share this all with you today. Before we close our program, just looking at our fundraiser, we are just underneath our $12,000 goal. We're just over $11,000 and just a few more gifts to support some of the things that Adriana highlighted earlier today. We'd really appreciate your continued support. Again, to reach that $12,000 goal, you can text SCI 2021 to 50155. And thank you so much for all the contributions that have gotten us so close and just below that goal line. The SCI auction is also another way that you can support SCI. Just go to the link in the chat, or you can go to socialcapitalinc.org. The auction is going to close at 3 p.m. this afternoon, so don't delay. While you're there, you can donate to fund a youth grant, a cultural connections dinner, or support our AmeriCorps graduation this year. On behalf of the SCI team, I would like to thank you for coming today. One more big thank you to all of our sponsors and our donors today, and a special thank you to all of our gold sponsors. Thank you again for your support of SCI and for supporting our amazing honorees, Betty, Paul, and Yolanda. This officially concludes our program, but we will leave the Zoom open for a little while for anyone who would like to stay and chat informally. Thank you so much for joining us today.